All right. It is May 18th, 2026, 6:42 p.m., and I'm calling to order the Borough Council of Westchester meeting work session. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Lisa Kearns, why don't you...
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, announcements. There will be a public hearing on May 20th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. It will be an ordinance of the Borough of Westchester, Chester County, Pennsylvania, amending the Code of the Borough of Westchester, Chapter 62, titled Garbage, Rubbish, and Refuge, to amend Section 62-8 to limit the maximum number of totes that may be used for recycling. B, announcing the continuance of the Westchester University conditional use hearing on May 28th, 2026 at 6 p.m. C, announcing the purpose of the April 27th, 2026 Borough Council Executive Session. What did we do there? April 27th. Was that legal? April. Yeah, legal. That was legal. All right. D, item D. The borough offices will be closed on Monday, May 25th for the Memorial Day holiday. So please note, trash, recycling, and yard waste collection will be pushed back by 1 day from your usual collection day. And then we are acknowledging our employee milestone anniversaries. Joseph Coleman from the Public Works Department, 5 years. And William Mann, Chief Information Security Officer, 40 years. All right, before we get started, we're going to make I'm sorry.
Just one more announcement, if I may. The Borough Council met in executive session this evening, May 18th, to discuss legal matters.
Thank you. Any other announcements? All right, moving on. For our agenda later tonight, in new business, we are going to move item E2, which is a motion to approve proposal for plan actuary services as submitted by Conrad Siegel. We're going to move that up to first. And then we're going to move F1, which is discuss appeal of zoning hearing board decision 516 North Church Street. We're going to move that to second, just to get some of those comments in a little bit earlier, since people are here to speak. All right. With that, comments, questions, petitions by residents in attendance and others in attendance.
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. I'd like the street area in front of my property reserved for my use. Thank you. You get to hear a bunch of ideas. You need to decide which ones are the good ones with fidelity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to reports and presentations. The annual report for the Transportation Advisory Committee, John O'Brien.
Good evening, Council. John O'Brien. I serve as the chair for the Transportation Advisory Committee. Just as a note, I know it says as Executive Director of Downtown Westchester. That is my day job. I'm on the TAC as just a private citizen. Bill, if we can put up first the share and closeout presentation. So we have a lot of information for you. We are going to try and be as brief as possible, just out of respect for everything you have on the agenda. So we wanted to highlight a work in collaboration that we did with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission and a nonprofit called Connecting the Dots. If you remember back, I think last year in either May or June of this time, we entered into an agreement with them. This was a free program. They were partnering with municipalities and looking to do survey work on what the transportation priorities are of the citizenry. So we can start off, we'll kind of skip a couple of the slides and go to slide 6 for the survey analysis. So this survey was conducted through the fall into the end of January. We had a total of 581 responses. 580 of those were in English, 1 was in Spanish. The breakdown, there's additional information that we have outside of this survey presentation. Your staff has access to all of this information as well. In terms, one of the questions that was asked before we get into some of the other key questions was, how do you typically get around the greater Westchester area? Check all that apply. In order, they were 87% of respondents drive, 75% of them walk, about 14% bike, and then it breaks down into about 9% said they also do ride share, and then there was questions about some that did SEPTA, bus, regional rail, et cetera, were on the lower end. So it was a check all that applies. So if you walk and drive around town, that's how that occurred. All right. So if we can go to slide 4 or slide 8, I mean, just to give you, if you go down a couple to survey prep, 1 up, survey profile, take a profile. Just as you can see, most of the respondents that we got were homeowners, 66%. They had lived in Westchester for a long time, 20 plus years. Majority were white, the overwhelming majority white. The age range was 26 to 75. The household income was over $100,000, and they most frequently drive or walk, as I mentioned. We did make efforts, working with trying to get the number of renters that responded up. We worked with different, either large landlord complexes, sent it out to the Zukin organization, the Property Managers Association. We left our survey response cards at the Westchester Public Library, at the Melton Center. We did pop-up events where we went to some of the events and stood there and actually filled out surveys with people. And then we also did online being the greatest amount of people that we saw. So we can go to the next slide. The biggest responses that we heard was overall safety and connectivity were the most important factors that people wanted to see. Parking was a big thing we heard about, especially in the open-ended questions, as no surprise. Sidewalk maintenance was a major theme between brick sidewalks and the difficulty of getting around, especially with ADA challenges. Some of the other things we heard, replacing the Flowbird app. So that is a win that we're moving to Park Mobile already there. As I said, maintaining the sidewalks and replacing brick sidewalks. There were several comments about liking the feel and the look of brick. However, the tough of being able to maintain them and how they constantly come up with weather and tree roots and things like that. And it makes it hard, whether you're pushing a stroller or you're walking with a cane or you have a wheelchair. That was mentioned several times as well. So we go down to the next slide about which statement most reflects your experience with bicycles. The top answer, as you can see, is I don't ride a bicycle in Westchester because bikes do not serve my transportation needs. The next highest question would be, or answer respondent was C, saying I would like to ride a bike in Westchester. There were more bike lines and parking options. Especially you'll see one theme here. You'll see people really lean into wanting bike lanes, but also more parking. Those things don't always live together because sometimes when you create a bike lane, you have to take away parking options unless you're going to do a shared riding experience. So if we move forward things, there's going to have to be education efforts just to make people understand trade-offs that go forward. And as you'll see in the presentation, there are different comments that we called out. This is a full list of all the open-end questions. I'm not going to go to all of those, but like I said, staff has access to that as well. We'll go to the next slide, question 3. What statement most reflects your experience with electric vehicle charging in the borough? As you can see, 60% of respondents said, I don't have an interest in electrical vehicles or electric vehicle charging. The next highest response would say, I would buy an EV if there were more public charging stations available. We did get some comments along the line that it's tough to even answer an EV question and that it's a unaffordable vehicle for them at this current moment. So that's not something they've really considered. We'll go to the next question, question 4. The nearest SEPTA regional rail and Amtrak station in Westchester is the Exton train station. Which statement most reflects your own experience with the Exton train station? For those who go, they said, I drive or use rideshare to get to the station. That was close to 57% of people. 40% of folks said, I do not use the Exton train station because it does not serve my transportation needs. We'll go to the next question, question 5. The Borough of Westchester is situated around trails for walking, rolling, running, and bicycling. Which statement most reflects your experience with nearby trails? And that was 50% of the folks said, I use the trails for recreational purposes, followed by, I do not use the trails because I do not know much about them. Obviously, right now in Westchester, we do not have much trail connectivity. There are some plans that we're studying, especially a rails and trails program by the railroad. In the open-ended questions, we got a lot of feedback on this, saying that folks were very excited about the possibility of having Westchester connected into larger rail or trail systems that exist throughout Chester County. Question, we'll go to the next slide. When walking or rolling through Westchester, what is most important to you? And that is the sidewalks. Streets have sidewalks and bike lanes, so pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles each have a designated space for travel. And this is another part of our presentation. After we get through the slideshow, just really quickly want to tell you about work we're doing on how to improve sidewalks in Westchester. We can go to the next slide. What is most important to you about improving the connection and construction of sidewalks when walking or rolling through Westchester? And top answer was about 41%. Sidewalk enhancements are prioritized at places for shopping and recreation. And we saw that in the comments of there's a couple areas where people say we want to be able to get to a grocery store. Borough's done some work with the crosswalk that was installed by the Bradford Shopping Plaza at the western edge of the borough. Some of this is going to need work with the COG to work on connecting. There's a lot of mention of connecting to Aldi or Acme or the whole West Goshen Shopping Center. That will require work with West Goshen Township to accomplish that. Going to the next slide, question 8. What statement most reflects your experience about the availability of ADA infrastructure and resources in the borough? Obviously, most respondents said, close to 70%, I've not personally needed to use or take specific notice of ADA infrastructure or resources. As a advisory group, we always want to remind that, while the ADA population is not going to be in the majority, that is still something we need to be intentional about and listen to them and still make that a priority so that everybody has the access that they need. We'll go, and then I just wanted to kind of go into the next steps real quick. I'll breeze this. These were things that Connect the Dots wanted to suggest to us to focus on. Replacing the Flowbird app, which is moving forward with the implementation of Park Mobile. We can go to the next slide. Maintaining sidewalks and replacing brick sidewalks. There was, as I said, comments that were centered around, is brick the best choice going forward, especially in the neighborhood districts where it has been harder to maintain. And then finally, more sidewalks and bike lanes for safe connections and expansions of the shuttle route for other locations in and near Westchester. So with that, I wanted to kind of go into, I've had conversations one-on-one with several different council members about their interest of how we can improve sidewalks in Westchester. And Bill, if we can open up the top one sidewalk you had it first. Yep, that one there. So the TAC has really examined the feasibility of the sidewalks that exist in Westchester, where they either are lacking, missing segments, or just in need of repairs. And we wanted to take a holistic approach where we looked at all of the sidewalks throughout Westchester, because as a council, you constantly have people coming before you saying XYZ crosswalk or project is the most important thing for this town. And a lot of times it's because those are the folks who know how to access government. They're usually more affluent. And we wanted to do a holistic examination of the entire town so that you had information about what sidewalks, whether, and there's a variety of different categories that Brandon's going to kind of take you through that are the criteria we're going to do. Our goal here is to score all the sidewalks. We have them listed by ward in the, or I should say all the blocks in Westchester. Find out what the most important sidewalks based on this criteria are, and then work with you and the borough staff to determine grant funding or other sources of funding to start implementing new sidewalks or sidewalk improvements in town. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon real quick to walk you through the criteria that we are recommending, and answer any questions that you might have or tweaks that you might want to see.
Hi, Brandon Emig, East Washington Street, also a member of the TAC committee. So as a committee, we came up with 6 criteria. We didn't want to get too many criteria. We wanted to limit exactly how many there were. And then we kind of generated this synopsis of each criteria on how we could score a specific segment of sidewalk. And we specifically wanted to divide every ward so that we could identify which wards needed the most amount of attention for sidewalk improvements. So with that, first one that we had was safety rating, and that's generally based on what the roadway that sidewalk segment is located on. So whether it be PennDOT, a 2-way township road, a 1-way township road, and then visibility and a non-existing footway or pathway on that segment. Go ahead and keep scrolling down for me, please. Second one would be destination proximity. So what are they adjacent to? That would be the school adjacent or grocery store, faith adjacent buildings, community centers, and then downtown adjacency. Scroll a little bit further, please. The third criterion that we had was connectivity, and that was surrounding limited parking adjacency, trail adjacent. I know that as a borough, we're looking to try and implement more trails around the borough, and that was one of the main things we wanted to touch on, is improving sidewalks that are through those trail corridors to be proposed. You can scroll up a little bit, please, just a little bit further. And then any public inquiries. Currently, we don't have any, but in the future, it's just worthwhile to note public inquiries and score it accordingly if there's something of need. Fourth was right-of-way impacts, which is big. Specifically, Will Williams was on our group here with the committee, and he stressed the importance of how many property owners are going to be notified of any sidewalk improvements and how much pushback you might get for that segment. So a right-of-way impact criterion, if the less, the better. So if there's only one property, it's that much more advantageous to get that sidewalk segment done if you can get that property owner on board. So 5 was feasibility. That's directly related to cost impacts. So utilities, tree replacements, historical or architectural impacts that you may have to account for. Go ahead and scroll a little bit further. And then the actual construction costs. And that was calculated. I have some background in construction and engineering, and I can base that off of just historical information on what sidewalk costs per square yard, depending on type, as well as how much it costs per foot for a curb. So if it's a longer sidewalk segment, that's usually going to obviously run over $100,000 versus if it's just on a corner, perhaps that's missing some sidewalk, that could still be within 25,000. And you might have to not have prevailing wage at that point as well. It's just a factor to keep in mind. And then the last was ADA compliance. So ADAG is a more stringent set of regulations to be met. And I just wanted to note if there was an opportunity to meet ADAG requirements, which is typically needed for multi-use trails, that would be great to make sure we have that for these sidewalk segments. If there's an existing ADA ramp that we're improving upon versus adding an entirely new ADA ramp, those would add additional scoring for that segment. And then if it's at a signalized intersection, that's just sort of plays more into the safety importance with signalized intersections predominantly on higher vehicular use roadways. And other than that, I mean, you can easily review this synopsis on your own. And if you have questions on how the scoring rates from 0 or 1 to 5, we've already completed wards 2 through 6, and we just have wards 1 through 7 that we intend to get through in the next month or so. So any further questions on sidewalk improvements? Be happy to hear it.
So yeah, we want to turn it over for any questions that the council has for us, things you want us to focus on. But at some point in the near future, we would like to probably have council approve this scoring matrix so that staff can use it as a attachment to any future grant applications that you might have to show that you have a serious way to evaluate your sidewalk needs in town.
Who's filling it out? Like, is there a number of you guys that are doing this? How do you stay?
Yeah, so we had started out with dividing these categories amongst the advisory committee. Obviously, you know, as it moves into real world applications, staff would kind of take over and look at the work that has been done, evaluate that, you know, our evaluations are correct. You know, Brandon has a great, you know, engineering background, so some of the more technical pieces he can handle for us. But that is going to be, so we wanted to kind of jumpstart the conversation there to kind of lessen the load, but ultimately it'll be staff when the borough is deciding really which projects to evaluate. They're going to have to verify that our scoring is accurate.
To touch on that further, once the scoring is completed, the matrix itself has a weighting sort of slide factor that you can apply, and each one of the criterion, if you think one is more important than the other, the borough staff or even council, you guys can play with the weighting scales. And the scoring for each segment will be set by the committee as we generate the numbers, but you can go and say, maybe the safety factor is more important than your right-of-way impact, and you can see how that changes the ranking per ward or across the whole borough. So.
I have a question. So I know you mentioned the aesthetics, but the complications with maintaining brick sidewalks.
Yes.
And it came up, I think, probably last month when we were discussing the improvements to High Street. A lot of us were kind of thinking that maybe stamped concrete would be a better option, might be more susceptible to expensive repairs since brick you can reset.
Right.
In your findings, did you get any feedback in terms of like the types of sidewalks besides brick that
We didn't
was
delve,
there-
yeah, we didn't delve deeply into yet about what types of sidewalks. I think people appreciated the aesthetic of the brick, but a couple of the challenges, and you know, Will Williams can send you all the full open-ended comments. You'll see several times through there. People talk about, you know, pushing a stroller, especially like just observationally among the committee. You know, it obviously is probably a bigger issue in the neighborhood districts than necessarily the business district. There are certain areas in the business district. But especially like, you know, we can all think about like South Walnut Street, like in your ward where like you have huge trees that are pushing up and creating like these mountains, or when it rains, it creates these divots or these puddles that live there for quite some time. That was a big challenge that we heard time and time again. It didn't focus too much on like, we didn't hear much like from like a property owner, whether it's a rental or a homeowner saying it's costing me a ton to. Anecdotally, we all had stories about people we knew that would say that they would replace their sidewalk if it were a cheaper, easier option with brick. But the borough does require that people maintain their sidewalks. There's a balancing act on, you know, how much we're going to go after people for that. But that is something that was mentioned several times.
Thanks for bringing that up. Appreciate it.
Explain the scoring a little bit more for me. So like the destination proximity, you have school adjacent, that's 2 points. And then grocery store adjacent, would that be another 1 point? And then if it's also faith adjacent, it would be another 1 point. And then a community center, it would be another 1 point.
Yeah, so with respect to like the proximity scoring, it's if a segment, let's say, was near a school or and a grocery store, it's just compounding, adding the value of that specific criterion. So if it happens to be near a school and a sidewalk and a church and downtown, so like near St. Agnes, for example, it kind of hits a few of those boxes at the same time. If there was a missing segment or a needed improvement segment of sidewalk, that would generate a higher score than, let's say, one that's in an alleyway.
So they are
more-
cumulative,
Yeah.
each one of the ones that
It adds
gets
upon
at
the
another
other.
point. And I'm curious, the ranking software that you're using that allows you to change the,
It's just an Excel file
Oh,
and there's
okay.
just a drop down like bubble effectively that'll create a multiplier. So when you want to set a one factor for the actual multiplier, it's only going to multiply the score of that whole column by one versus if you want to apply a five multiplier, it's going to heavily weight that criteria comparatively to one that's lower rated.
gotcha. And just the final thing, if we could have a couple of examples next time too, give us an actual.
Sure. So I have one actually for your connectivity question. They're on the 600 block of West Gay Street. So that's right when you cross the old Shanahan. A lot of students will walk to Hillsdale Elementary, but there's a missing segment of sidewalk there. So if you go there any morning, you will see students walking up Gay Street, get on the sidewalk. They will get off the street, have to go on the road, walk down a house or two, and then go up a driveway and come back onto the sidewalk. So there's a safety concern there too with having school children in the street, whereas we have one segment there that could plug a connectivity need there.
So I'd love to see what that score looks like in relation to some other.
Yeah, and we have gone through, as we've started working through this, and we have a couple of the wards. We've been doing this ward by ward. For this presentation, we didn't want to show you the half scored sheet yet, just because we didn't want to over confuse the process.
A couple examples would be good.
Sure.
If there's a sidewalk across the street, does that have an impact? An existing one from where
It
the- across the
does.
street
With
is?
connectivity section, there is, if an existing sidewalk segment is present, then it creates a lesser score for that. So connectivity, we noticed, for the most part, we do have one sidewalk segment on a street. So it does bring our connectivity score typically on average lower than the other criterion sections have been scoring. So,
And depending on the block, you might not want to have, even if there's a sidewalk on the other side, you don't necessarily want to have to send somebody through the middle of the street, depending on how busy that particular intersection is.
Thanks.
And I'm curious if there's any way to quantify things like West Ashbridge Street by Hoops Park, by Hoops Lane there, if you know where I'm talking about. There's no stop sign, there's no sidewalk on the park side. There's only a sidewalk on the neighborhood side. So they have to cross there,
Yep.
which is kind of in the middle of a block and no stop sign and people go pretty fast
Yep.
on Ashbridge. Any
So-
way to quantify that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we went through whether it's the connectivity, I mean, all those different ratings with not having a stop sign, but every single block in Westchester is on that scoring matrix. So we would go through every single one of those. And so if you have to remind me what that is in which ward?
7.
Yeah, so we'd have to scroll down. If you scroll down on the left, it's by 7.
And you do have West Ashbridge on there.
No? Okay, that good. Yeah, but we do have that in there.
So the way we generated this segment list came directly from a DVRPC ARC, like a GIS map, where they actually highlighted segments of road that already had 2 sidewalks on each side versus only 1 versus none. So there's actually like a colored map of our entire borough. Every single segment of sidewalk is colored on the main streets. They didn't worry about the alleyways, obviously, but that's how this whole list came about.
And we evaluate this through either site visits or Google Maps. That DVRPC map was a good jumping off point, but even as we were going through, we recognized some areas that they weren't picking up that we know locally has a sidewalk issue.
A lot of work and a lot of thought went into this, so thank
Yes.
you. It's really important.
So this is something I will say is a pride for Westchester. DVRPC, who obviously deals with these issues day in, day out, is not aware of any other municipality kind of going down this rabbit or this route to take this holistic look at their sidewalk transportation needs. So it's something we feel very strongly about. We're proud to offer to council, and we hope that is something that council will work with us on.
I think, any questions from those in attendance here? All right, well, thank you guys very much. All right, Sean, are we moving the manager report to Wednesday?
Let's table it to Wednesday, please.
Okay. All right. All right. All right, so old business, approve the April 14th and 15th, 2026 Borough Council meeting minutes. Any questions from anyone here? Any questions from anyone out there? All right, then we'll move that to consent. All right, new business. All right, so we said we were going to move E2, which is motion to approve proposal for plan actuary services as submitted by Conrad Siegel. And this was the Finance and Revenue Committee recommended it 3-0.
Discussion at last week's meeting about the process that we went through, the Pension Plan Committee went through to review the RFPs that were issued last fall. We had 4 very competitive submissions. It really came down to 2 groups that we liked a lot, and it was hard to really pick between the 2 of them. But I think what sealed the deal with our recommendation to go with Conrad Siegel is their ability to provide an online service that we were looking for plan participants, and also just their overall professional quality that they were presenting and their cost. And we like the fact that they were local, mid-sized company from the capital region in Pennsylvania, not a large, not part of a very large multinational company. I invited John Vargo to be here tonight. If you have any questions about Conrad Siegel, he can answer them much better than I. But our committee's the recommendation, Pension Plan Committee and Finance Committee remain to go ahead and execute a deal with John and his firm.
Any question, anything? Any questions from those out here? Okay, I guess consent. I think we're good.
Thank you for coming, though.
Yes. Glad we moved that up, so you weren't just sitting here for a while. All right, Chris. All right, well, yeah, Kristen's out there. All right, so smart growth item F1, discuss appeal of zoning hearing board decision 516 North Church Street. There was no recommendation from the committee, but.
So this is just to refresh everybody's memory. This is North Church Street. The property owners, the homeowners would like to add a garage. They asked for a variance from the zoning hearing board. They were granted it based on the footprint and the impervious. And so we did not vote on this last week. We wanted to seek some further information, and we did. How do we, I'm not really sure how we.
So what, why don't we have, I know we have some of the residents here, so why don't we let them come up and provide their case
Okay.
again, and we'll start from there, just for anyone who hasn't heard the situation.
Very good. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello, Borough Council. My name is Kimberly Love, and I reside on the 500 block of North Darlington Street behind Scott Alley. At the direction of the Borough, members of our residential neighborhood have spoken at the Zoning Hearing Board on March 31st, at Smart Growth on April 8th and May 13th, at the Borough Council Working Session on April 14th, all in opposition to the granting of the variance requested by the new owners of 516 North Church Street. We have since been directed to attend this meeting again for the benefit of full council. I believe you were all previously provided copies of what my neighbor Sarah Rogers presented last week, as well as commentary and an addendum. As such, I have abbreviated comments to share with Borough Council this evening to reiterate our points. As discussed at all prior meetings, we collectively have major environmental and safety concerns regarding the approval of the larger footprint garage ADU project. Most importantly, we respectfully submit that the applicant has not demonstrated the type of hardship legally required for zoning relief, namely proof of unnecessary hardship created by unique physical conditions of the property and proof that the property cannot reasonably be used without relief. We maintain that the property is fully usable as currently zoned. The inability to add a detached garage or ADU of the size requested is a limitation shared by any similarly sized property in the district. The requested hardship is self-created, arising because the owners want to construct a building of that size beyond what zoning permits. The requested variance does not represent the minimum variance which will afford the applicant's relief and represent the least possible modification of the ordinance. The standard size of a two-car garage is 400 to 600 square feet, well below the 800 square foot footprint being requested and approved by the variance. The requested variance is also not de minimis in that the deviation from the building lot coverage of 4.13% in excess of the maximum building coverage permitted is in fact an increase of 20.5% or 500 square feet of the building coverage allowed. As such, we believe the applicant has not demonstrated unnecessary hardship unique to the property, only a desire to exceed the development limits established by zoning ordinance. We respectfully request the Borough Council consider appealing the zoning hearing board's decision. I suspect that you may hear from the applicant's lawyer that the applicant no longer intends to construct the accessory dwelling unit above the garage. Our concerns about the 800 square foot footprint remain, and we would propose that the existing variance be repealed and the owners submit a new request with revised plans. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. We appreciate the ability to bring this in front of you.
Okay, so there was a large, I'm sorry, my apologies.
Hi, Brian Nagel on behalf of the applicant. I can wait or I can go now. It's either whatever works for you. Okay, sure. Good evening, Brian Nagel on behalf of the applicant again. I just want to address a few of the points that, I'm sorry, did you say? Ms. Love? Ms. Love. Ms. Love made. First of all, the suggestion that there's major, I mean, anybody can have any concern that they want to have, but there really can't be any legitimate major environmental or safety concern with this. It's a garage, like many other garages that exist, that have existed for a long time or have been built recently in the Borough of Westchester on an alley. It's set back from the alley to allow space before a vehicle pulls out into the alley. It complies. There's a comment about impervious coverage. There's no impervious coverage. This complies with the zoning ordinance requirement for impervious coverage. So it's completely compliant in that regard. The variance was for building coverage. So there's a limit for impervious coverage, a limit for building coverage. So the variance was for the building coverage, going over the variation from the ordinance requirement on building coverage, but impervious coverage is met and the project will comply completely with the borough's stormwater management requirements. So there really can't be any concern there because any new stormwater has to be managed under the borough's regulations, and this project, that will happen with regard to this new garage. I was here at the Smart Growth Committee. Some of you I know were here. I don't want to sort of repeat myself totally, but I do want to say that you've got a group of neighbors and you've got a neighbor who's trying to build a garage. I don't think there's any real legitimate concerns, but the fact remains that Ms. Love mentioned the legal hardship standard, that the applicant doesn't meet that. We presented the case to the zoning hearing board in the opposition of all of the neighbors, and the zoning hearing board disagreed. They found that my client does meet the standard, which is why they approved the variance. Be that as it may, if the neighbors would like to appeal that decision, they're free to do so, and they can present their case on appeal. But I think it's totally inappropriate. We went to the zoning hearing board, we presented the case, they approved the variance. I've had other cases where the borough's position has been, look, it went in front of the zoning hearing board, it's on appeal, we're going to let the appeal process play out, we're not going to participate. I don't think it's appropriate to spend taxpayer dollars to take up a cause of neighbors against neighbors. I think it's totally inappropriate, and I don't think council should do that in this case.
I'm sorry, you made a remark about the ADU, and early on, I didn't catch quite what you said
About the ADU,
about the ADU, yes.
I think Ms. Love said that you might hear from me about my client not pursuing an ADU.
You said about the ADU, and I didn't catch what you said.
If I did, I don't remember what I said about the ADU. I'm sorry if anybody else does. I'm happy to address it, but I don't remember making a comment specifically about the ADU.
Okay.
I will say this. There was no relief requested with respect to the ADU. In other words, the ADU is not an issue in this variance. This variance was simply for building coverage for the new garage.
Mr. Nagel, can I ask a question? This is Kristen Camp.
Hi, Kristen. Sure.
Hi there. If your client was to just build the garage without the ADU, would it still need the variance relief for the 24.13% building cover? Or is the size of the structure and the amount of relief requested in some way connected to the fact that they wanted to do the ADU?
I didn't hear everything you said, Kristen, but I think I can answer the last question. And if there's something that I missed, maybe somebody who could hear Kristen could tell me. But I believe that to some extent, the size of the garage is driven by the desire to have an ADU because you have to have a you have to have a stair to go upstairs, Kristen, as you could imagine. So
Right. So my question was, if you get rid, because somebody mentioned at the beginning that we may hear you say you'll get rid of the request for the ADU, and I don't know if that's true or not, but if you did, does that reduce the amount of relief you need?
in all candor, I think my client was is concerned about the relationships in the neighborhood, and certainly feels they have the right to build what was approved through the variance process. However, I think they were considering looking at eliminating the ADU to address the concerns in the neighborhood to the end of neighborly relations. I guess I'll say that. And I think if they did that, then there's a potential that the building coverage could go down, but I don't know that for sure. Certainly, this is impervious coverage, not building coverage, Kristen, but there's a parking
I
spot
understand. That's
required.
what I said.
I'm sorry?
Okay. One other thing, that's fine. I did say building cover. I just want council to understand, I disagree with his comment about it's not appropriate for council to get involved in neighbor versus neighbor. That is not what you would be doing. Council voted to send the solicitor to the zoning hearing board. Council is a separate party in this hearing. And if council, who is a separate independent body from the zoning hearing board, feels that the decision was in error, it has the right to file an appeal. That is its policy decision. So I disagree with your characterization that if council votes, and I'm not, let them vote, but if they vote to decide to get involved and appeal it, that doesn't mean they're getting involved in neighbor versus neighbor. They're trying to uphold their decision that they wanted council to send the solicitor to oppose the application. So they, as a party, have the right to do that in any zoning hearing board decision.
Yeah, I wasn't commenting that they didn't have the legal right to file an appeal. I know they have a legal right to file an appeal.
Well, you said, you characterized it as getting involved in neighbor versus neighbor dispute, and I don't think that's a fair characterization.
I disagree with you.
I have a question on the average size of a two-car garage. I mean, I think your client is doing 800 square feet in total for the building, and the average size of a garage, two-car garage is 4 to 6, Miss Love, you said?
400 to 600 square feet.
400 to 600.
I don't know. I don't know what the average size of a garage is. So I don't know if that's true or not true. I haven't researched that. I think if you'd have to get some statistics and look at what the average size, I mean, I think it would be fair to look at what the average size of a garage is, a comparable home. There's some fairly sizable garages in the borough, so I don't know how you quantify that.
But you did kind of say it's a little bigger because you need the steps for the ADU. Yeah.
Well, yes, I was answering Kristen's question to say, yes, if you didn't have the ADU, you probably, and I don't know this, I haven't talked to my client, I haven't talked to the builder who testified as an expert in front of the zoning hearing board. So I would have to ask them that question. But based on my experience, I would imagine that if you didn't need the internal stair to go upstairs, you could shrink that down a little bit.
Okay, so that would take away, so that would, the hardship, if you don't have an ADU, then there's not as a hardship to have the garage, it sounds like. Because the question is whether or not there's a hardship for the garage.
No, I don't think that's right, Nicole, because you would, because of the building coverage, you would still need a variance. It would just be to a lesser degree. If my client's fully within their rights to do to build an ADU and to have an ADU there, but if they chose to forego the ADU, I would think the variance would still be required, but the amount of relief could be reduced if you eliminated the ADU. If you have the ADU, you can't reduce it.
That makes me wonder then if it's the least possible modification of the ordinance.
With an ADU, it absolutely is.
ADU.
With an ADU, it absolutely is the least possible modification. And the way the law works, from my perspective, is that if you have the right to build something on your property, then you're entitled to the appropriate size for that, which in this case would be an ADU. And if you couldn't build it smaller, then you meet that standard. And we had testimony and evidence during the hearing on that was presented, and the zoning hearing board accepted that we met that standard.
I'm sorry, did you say that you could not make an ADU smaller?
Correct. This was the.
Why would that be? I don't understand that.
There was testimony during the hearing about the size that was needed for this particular use.
If you wanted to make it that big in a two-car garage, if you
Yeah.
did a
For an
one-car
ADU,
garage
correct.
and a smaller
Yeah,
ADU,
A
then
lot of ADUs smaller than that now.
I lived in a 500 square foot apartment in New York City for a couple of years, so yeah.
I don't know the size of it. Again, I don't know the size of an average ADU. All I know is what was presented in this case and what the expert testified about in this case.
There was also testimony, though, about the ability to build a one-car garage, but your client saying it doesn't make sense for us to build a one-car garage, but that's their opinion. So you feasibly could build a one-car garage and not need as much relief as you thought.
I disagree with that, because I think a market, I think there actually was testimony, and certainly the fact of the matter is that people don't build one-car garages because they don't help resale value, they hurt resale value. So it creates a problem for the real estate. And I would submit that saying, oh, well, you can just build a one-car garage is not a reasonable use of a property that's entitled to have a garage in 2026.
It's not entitled to have a garage if you can't meet the area and bulk requirements. That's the point. You can't meet the building coverage requirements and build a detached garage. And therefore, you're bound to have to prove all 5 elements of a variance. And I think the borough's position at the hearing was there is a reasonable use of the property made. The fact that your client can't build the size of the garage it wants does not create, that's not a unique physical characteristic of the property that creates a hardship. That was the borough's position at the hearing. So to the extent that a majority of members of council still believe that, then I think they would vote to us to appeal it.
Yes, and that's correct. And my position was, and the applicant's position was what I said it was at the hearing, and the zoning hearing board evaluated that and approved the variance.
So that would strictly be, you're citing a financial reason though, and that's not.
Well, actually, an economic reason can be a basis for a dimensional variance. So that is a viable, that's not the only reason. I don't want that to be misconstrued. That's a reason, and that's a valid basis under the Hertzberg and the other decisions from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and the Commonwealth Court that have been decided since that time. So that is a valid basis.
I think there's some debate about that, but the last thing I have is the applicant is saying that this is de minimis. And if it's de minimis, then why don't they just get rid of the part that makes it over the limit and it's de minimis? If it's de minimis, if you're saying it's de minimis for us, why isn't it de minimis for them?
I'm not sure. De minimis is a legal standard to qualify the nature of a dimensional variance. It's not like a practical litmus test for what you think is de minimis versus what we think is de minimis. It doesn't really work that way. I think you're mixing apples and oranges. I understand what you're trying to say, but I think you're mixing apples and oranges. If the zoning hearing board determines that a variance is de minimis and there's no clear-cut standard for that, and actually we had multiple arguments for why it's de minimis, the zoning hearing board agreed with that, and that's just a legal determination. It's not really a practical consideration.
And the zoning hearing board was 2-1? Is that
Correct.
I don't think we're going to have consensus on this tonight to put it on the agenda. Let's move it to tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I'd like to open it up for any additional comment from those that are here. Is there any additional comment?
Before you
Okay.
do, I just had one question. So when do you think, if in fact the applicants are considering eliminating the above ground living quarters, when do you think they'll make that decision?
When they've had a sufficient communication from the neighbors to be able to try to reach some resolution that would either avoid or resolve an appeal of the decision by the neighbors and meet my client's desire to sort of do their part to try to resolve the neighborly issue, I'll call it. And so I don't know, Mayor, but that's what it would require.
Has your client reached out to all the neighbors?
Yes. Or at least, I mean, there were a number of them, as you know, from the Smart Growth Committee meeting, but my client or someone on my client's behalf has reached out to neighbors to say, hey, can we have a discussion to try to come to a middle ground on this?
But your client hasn't necessarily reached out to all the neighbors. Maybe
I think they've-
somebody talked to somebody who reached out to somebody else, like whisper down the lane, but not necessarily directly gone across the lawn to talk to different individuals.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, what I've heard through some of these hearings and some of the, the committee meetings is that most neighbors never heard from your clients.
You may have heard that. I don't know if that's an accurate representation, though.
I heard, I think it was from you, who said they talked to their neighbors on either side, but they didn't actually speak to anybody else except for those two adjacent.
Well, they've attempted on numerous occasions to speak with Miss Rogers and her husband, and they haven't been willing to speak with them, is my understanding.
And I'm thinking, I mean, we would love to avoid further litigation. You would probably, your client would probably, so if a discussion can be had before we go down that route, I think that's what the mayor might have been getting at.
I suspect if all the neighbors are willing to engage in that discussion will occur. I can also tell you that if one of the challenges in this kind of a situation is the zoning hearing board decision gets rendered, and under the law, there's 30 days to appeal it. So there's not a lot of time to reach a full resolution in that window. So probably the neighbors will have to appeal it. And then during the pendency of the appeal, the neighbors and my client, I think, is my understanding, would be trying to work out some resolution that would address their concerns to the point where they'd be willing to withdraw or resolve their appeal. So that, I think, will happen regardless. Those discussions will occur regardless of whether council appeals. I've questioned, and it's Smart Growth Committee, I question using taxpayer dollars to appeal a decision of this type, I guess I would say.
And I would just reiterate that it's always council's policy decision as to whether it would like to uphold its ordinance if it feels that the zoning hearing board did not make the appropriate decision.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing, Kristen, that what's the slippery slope if we don't uphold our ordinances and what we want our building code to look like? What's the slippery slope with that? And that's where.
Yeah, we can talk again in executive session to get legal advice, but I think that it's not a slippery slope because I think I'm not saying that in every case the zoning ordinance has to be strictly applied because that's exactly what variances are for. But there are also legal standards that the state law and the borough zoning ordinance require an applicant to prove. And if council believes that in this case, and I know you're not the zoning hearing board, but you've been guided on how you go about interpreting those 5 criteria for variance. If you feel that that's not been met in this case, and I think the primary factor is this lot unique such that it creates a hardship to comply with the 20% building cover? I think that's really what it comes down to.
And in that context, I want to make sure council's aware that there's an issue with the ordinance in this case, which makes it.
But Brian, that's a different issue than whether there are physical circumstances of the property. You're challenging and saying the ordinance doesn't make sense. That has nothing to do with the application you filed.
No, but I think in fairness, I have to tell council what my position is on that, and that's what I'm going to do. And that is that your ordinance has a hard cutoff phasing for what building coverage is allowed. And in this case, my client has a 12,250 square foot lot. And if they had an 11,999 square foot lot, they could build this garage far in excess. They could double the relief that was granted by the zoning hearing board and be in compliance with the ordinance. So it's like this cutoff line where other neighbors could build a garage this size simply because they have a lot that's 251 square feet smaller, and there's a problem with there's a legal problem with the ordinance because of that. That's also another basis for why this is a de minimis variance. Because if my client's lot was just a tiny bit bigger, and you know how small 250 square feet or 251 square feet is, they could build this garage, they could build even a bigger garage. And so I think that's an important consideration in the context of this case. And I'm just letting you know that's an issue. I think that offers even more support for the de minimis nature of the variance than the percentage increase does, in my opinion. And
And that
I believe,
same ordinance is applied across the board to all properties in the borough. So again, you did not raise that as a challenge in terms of challenging the legal lawfulness of the ordinance. So I don't think it's relevant to council's consideration on whether they appeal. It may be relevant to in the future if they feel that it's something that needs further attention.
I'm just letting council know that that's an issue, and that also contributes to the de minimis nature of the variance. And the zoning hearing board heard about all of this, and I know they took it carefully into consideration when they issued their decision.
Aaron Fluke, Director of Building and Housing. Just to answer Nicole's question, statistics state that 20 by 20 is the smallest two-car garage that you can have. 24 by 24 is the average size of a two-car garage in the state of Pennsylvania.
And what's this one, Aaron?
I do not have the plans in front of me, and I don't want to give poor information.
Do you
I think
know
it
what
was
it
close
is,
to
Frank?
800 square feet.
Do you know if it's 24 by 24 or
I can look
what
at
the
the
dimensions are?
I can look at the plan, Lisa, and let you know. Uh,
38 by 26?
Correct. That's
Thank
correct.
you.
But I would note that's an ADU. So I would think that very well, if the average size of a regular garage is what Mr. Fluke said, I think that's very well at minimum, if not smaller than the average size of what an ADU would be. A modern ADU. And if you go around and look at some of the existing carriage houses in the borough that have been, before the ADU ordinance was passed, I think most of you probably know this, before the ADU ordinance was passed, you were permitted to have a dwelling unit if you had a historic carriage house. And if you go and look at some of those historic carriage houses, some of them are huge.
Some of them are on bigger pieces of ground too. I don't think that's necessarily a relevant argument. But I think, are there any more questions or points to raise? Yeah,
Discussion for tomorrow
yeah.
or
End of
Wednesday?
day.
It's, we don't have a consensus, do we have a consensus?
I don't think so.
Given that your meeting is Wednesday night, I'm not available Wednesday night. So can I just tell you, my position is everything that I said, smart growth, everything I said tonight. And please take that in consideration in your discussion on Wednesday night.
Of course, I mean, we certainly understand the zoning hearing board that approved this, but again, as everybody's pointed out, it wasn't a unanimous vote, right? There was some dissent. And we saw a groundswell of pushback from the neighbors. So I think it does bear further discussion.
Understood. I just wanted to let you know, me not being here Wednesday night isn't because I've changed my position or my clients changed their position or that I'm giving.
We were going to be concerned that you didn't show up,
I thought-
that we were going to be like, Brian doesn't care anymore.
I thought you might think I was giving up.
He's talked to the neighbors. He's good.
All right.
No.
Thank you.
All right.
Right.
So we're not.
All right. Yeah. I know, Ms. Love, you were about to stand up. Did you have one more thing that you wanted? Probably. I mean, yeah, at this point, it's. Okay.
Okay, so we're just gonna.
All right. Discussion on Wednesday. All right, back to the second page. All right, motion to waive conflict for Belwar Kelly.
Evening, everyone. Jonathan Long from Belwar Kelly. Reason I'm here before you tonight is, as you may or may not remember, my firm serves as conflict solicitor for 2 land development projects. One is the former Mitch's Gym, and the other one is the Rubenstein's project. Both of those projects are essentially inches away from completion. It's basically ministerial and administrative tasks in the form of land development agreements, things like that, that need to be finalized with the developer on each of those. In the meantime, my firm has been approached by another organization to handle potentially 2 land development projects within the borough that have nothing to do with the 2 projects where I'm representing the borough. So I reached out to Sean. He said that I should put it in front of you and talk to you about whether or not the borough would be willing to waive the conflict, since technically the firm is still representing the borough on 2 unrelated matters. So.
I have no issues. I read the note that you sent around.
I have no questions.
Anyone, Mayor, any questions? Anybody in the audience with any questions? Well, it looks like this was the easier of the legal conversations tonight.
I mean, if you want me to weigh in on dimensional variances and things like that.
Nope, we're good. Consent. Okay.
Just to clarify, you're going to continue to represent the borough in those 2 earlier cases, and these other cases you'll represent not the borough.
Yes,
Correct.
basically, yeah. And like I said, both of those projects that I represent the borough have already gone through planning commission, through council, everything like that. There's no presentations to be done in front of the council or planning commission or anything like that. Like I said, it's literally just working out the details of the land development agreements and financial security agreements, things like that, that are really pretty much based on, I'm sorry?
No one's adding a garage to their plans.
No, nobody is building. Brian is involved in them, but no, I've not heard about any ADUs or garages that are being built in any of them. They're pretty much set at this point.
I take it you don't see a conflict of interest.
What's that?
And I take it you don't see a conflict of interest.
No, there's no direct conflict of interest that we see because they're not related to each other. It's just the fact that we represent the borough as well as we would be representing somebody then coming before the borough. But all the projects are completely unrelated from each other.
I think we're good. Well, consent, go forth and grow your business.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks. All right, Public Works. Who's covering?
That's me tonight. I'm Bernie Flynn. Motion to approve the sale of items from wastewater with proceeds being deposited into the sewer fund. This was some old equipment that they feel that they have some salvage, freezer, vote. I'd like to put this on consent.
Any question? Any questions out there? Consent.
All right, I'm also public safety. So I'm up next. Motion to approve the draft amendment to Chapter 80, peddling, soliciting handbills, and schedule a public hearing for June 17th, 2026. This has been on the agenda for quite a few months. I met with our solicitor, Kristen Camp. I don't know if she's still on the phone or not.
I am.
Okay. I walked through all the changes. A lot of them were logical changes, or there were some exemptions that didn't make sense or were covered in other ordinances. The one thing that may cause a little bit of a conflict is we're requiring anyone that's soliciting or giving out handbills or that if they require a license or a permit, then we need to know their location, but they can't be in a fixed spot. So they can't set up a desk or a booth or something like that. They have to actually be on feed, which the test case that I was using for this was Alex's Lemonade Stand. So Alex's Lemonade Stand is a 503c nonprofit. They would not be permitted to set up a table or a lemonade stand, which, you know, they receive donations and so on and so forth. But they could do that at a different time, place, such as a special event. So that they would be permitted to do it there, just not on a normal weekend, Sunday during gay street closure or something like that during the summer. We also put a distance requirement in for.
But like, let's say I'm a business and I want Alex's lemonade stand to be inside my business selling lemonade one day. Like, that's something that can be done. Yeah.
Inside, yes, not on the sidewalk.
Yeah. Okay. Still opportunity for
Brian,
that.
Brian, can I just jump in? Because your test case was really helpful to sort of sort this through. And two things that I would suggest as options. One, I don't think that the exemption that we added to exempt organizations, actually, that's not true. I misunderstood that. Strike that comment. I think that the exemptions are fine. So if you want to, and this is for council's consideration, the idea of not letting somebody set up permanently on a borough street or borough sidewalk except for special events, I think was more to address the sale of goods. For example, ice cream carts, or, you know, people pushing carts selling necklaces or something. But so there is a difference in the ordinance between peddling, which is selling goods, and soliciting, which is soliciting for donations. You can treat those differently if you feel that they're different, you know, different justifications. So, for example, the Alex's Lemonade, I know they typically set at the corner of Church and Market a couple times a year and sell their lemonade to solicit donations. If that's something that you are okay with, I think you could change the rules to allow solicitation of donations, but not selling of goods. Again, that's totally a policy decision for council. I just wanted to throw it out there as an option.
I'm actually comfortable leaving it where it is right now because it kind of opens up the door for people that are fundraising and setting up, and also, the one organization that keeps coming up is Brady. So, you know, in that instance, I don't think we would want this. That'd be my recommendation, is to leave it as it is. We tested it through, and I think there's other places to put fundraising activities.
And what we're voting on tonight is just to advertise the public hearing. So we could still.
No, we would be voting on the ordinance changes that we proposed through Public Safety
No,
Committee.
but we did not advertise this as an ordinance hearing yet. So Lisa is correct that if you move this forward, we will schedule a public hearing for your June meeting.
Yes, both things.
We have some time to, if the public comes back too and says, we want to change this.
Well, we could change it at the hearing in that case. Okay. Yeah.
Get to move it forward. The other question I had, and I think I asked it, I asked it in my head. In one part of the ordinance, we seem to say you have to tell us a location. And then in this other part, we say you can't have a fixed location. How do I do?
It could be on a street, Lisa. It could be like, I'm going to be on the 100 block of South High Street during Tuesdays and Thursdays, you know, this particular Tuesday from 3 to 5. So we're not going to set up an actual booth, and maybe you're walking around.
Gotcha. Okay. So the location can be a general location, not a specific fixed location.
That's accurate.
Got it. Thank you.
And then the other thing I was mentioning was the distance requirement. So we put, you know, you can't be blocking an entrance to a building, whether that's a residence or whether that's an office space or a retail business or so on and so forth. So 5 feet was the what Chris and I came up with. And those were really the biggest pieces. So again, committee recommendation to push this through finally.
Any public comment?
John O'Brien, Executive Director of Downtown Westchester. This is just a technical question. because I know it was discussed at one of the prior committee meetings. So for even the organizations that are exempt from registration and licensing based on the PA Solicitation of Funds for Charitable Purposes Act, do they still need to let the borough know just that they are going to be in town?
They do
Or do
not
they
need to get a
not need-
license. They do
No,
not
they,
need a license, but they need to still meet standards of conduct that are set forth in the ordinance.
okay, and they need to have some kind of proof, like with them on the street that they have this.
No, so
license.
no. So the state law requires most charitable organizations that are soliciting to register annually with the state. There are certain organizations that are set forth in the state statute that are exempt. For example, educational institutions, hospitals, veterans organizations, volunteer firemen, volunteer ambulance, nonprofit libraries, and parent-teacher organizations are some of the ones that are specifically exempted from the state registration. And this ordinance proposes that those same organizations are exempt from obtaining a borough license,
Okay.
but they still have to comply with the standards of conduct that are
Got
set
it.
forth in the proposed ordinance.
Cool. Thank you.
That's still a lot, but okay.
Any other public questions, comments? All right, I think this is going to consent.
Okay, next item is C2, motion to permit colored lights to be installed on Gay Street in recognition of Pride Month. This was another committee recommendation, 330.
We're lights on at this point, yes? Yeah, okay, we're lights on. There was
Wow.
a question of insurance, but that got covered.
All right.
So,
Consent.
yeah, consent. Any other comments?
Comment?
No? Okay.
Next item was a motion to approve the resolution to destroy police records that have exceeded the retention periods as required by PA law. We do this, I believe, the chief said twice a year. I remember going through this before. This is just standard operating procedure. So committee recommendation 3-0.
Any comment?
And any comment? Next item is special event applications. Committee recommended to approve the following special event permits. 7/9/26 Clydesdale Parade, which we've done in the past. 6/12/26 World Cup Watch Party, which is going to be at Kildare's and hosted by Downtown Westchester. On 9/12/26 Up on the Roof, which is an annual event hosted by Downtown Westchester. On October 11th, 26, the F4 Chili Cook-Off, which they've been doing for, I believe this will be their third or fourth year. I think it's their third year. And then October 17th, the Unite for Her 5K. There's been an estimate of about 2,000 people that are going to be part of this. I think it keeps getting bigger. It's popular. And then the 12/5/26 Jingle Run 5K Loop hosted by the Care Center Foundation. Again, committee recommended approving these events 3-0.
So this isn't necessarily a commentary on this one, but last week I was walking uptown and I ran into these folks with like hula hoops and cones and things like that. And I'm like, what is this? And it was the amazing race that is done on the sidewalks. And I was like, I don't remember approving this. And I started thinking to myself, A, did we approve it? And B, if we did approve it, I forget. So I wouldn't mind well, Sean, you're looking at me like maybe we should have approved it, and that's another conversation. Okay, maybe not. But my question is there a way either before the events come back again, like that, Keith comes with a reminder, or John, you come with a reminder. I mean, some of the big ones we remember, like we know, like are going to happen, like the Christmas parade, we're going to know that that's happening. But like, the World Cup watch party, I'm going to forget that by next month that it's going to happen. And maybe there's just some kind of reminder of events coming up for us so that, you know, when we're here, we don't forget what we approved. Yeah, I mean, I check Facebook some, you know, but not, I try not to sit on it. I'm only partially addicted. Yeah.
Sorry, just John O'Brien, Executive Director of Downtown Westchester. Just so the public is well informed, the Clydesdale Parade is not been fully confirmed yet. We only ever get notice from them a couple weeks out, but we wanted to get the proper paperwork approved by the council. We've zeroed in with them. That is a possible date. They'll be in here for the MLB All-Star Game. So just before everybody thinks that it is a done deal, it is not a complete done deal, but we wanted to get the approvals necessary to make that happen since people love that. And also just as a note, the Up on the Roof fundraiser is technically hosted by the Westchester Downtown Foundation, who's affiliated with me, but it's our 501c3 organization, has a separate board and everything. So I just wanted to create that clarity.
So my question about the Clydesdale, I know they don't confirm to 2 weeks out, but would the date change or stay?
No, that's the only date they have left on the calendar. So assuming that nothing else comes up that would be prioritized and bump us off. And we'll get more than 2 weeks. Last time, I think it was like 4 or 5 weeks ahead of the time that we actually got confirmation from the Clydesdales. They're also, just so everybody knows, it's very weather dependent. If it's misting, because each horse is like $1 million, if it starts misting, they will put them back on the trailers. That's just kind of, you know, what we have to work with, but people seem to really love them. So we're trying our best to make that happen.
All right. Consent. Sounds like consent. Okay. Parking.
A couple of motions that took a considerable amount of effort to compile together. The first one is the motion to direct the solicitor to prepare and advertise changes in Chapter 104 for timed areas, metered timed areas, parking prohibited during certain hours, and we're going to schedule a public hearing on June 17th. The changes are involving a large part of 3-hour parking throughout the borough. The attempt is to be consistent and to serve the community by providing a standard set of hours throughout different parts of the borough so that they know that they can park for 3 hours. If you need more than 3 hours, we encourage you to use the garages. So that's the first motion. Discussion? Any concerns? Okay. Second motion, discussion is regarding parking permits for the First Presbyterian Church Bucket School. Their employees were having a conflict with parking due to law firms in the area and their clients parking in areas blocking other legitimate use that's necessary for the teachers at the school. So we'd like to request the Bucket School to be included in the residential parking permit program. And again, this is just for discussion. Are there any comments?
Well, it looks like you guys recommended that we're going to issue some temporary permits.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just till the end of the year.
Right.
Would they have any limitations like they couldn't use them on Friday nights or Saturday nights or something? I don't know how you could control that.
I think the interest is just while they're being employed while they're teaching at the school. It's not.
So that's the spirit of the law. But
No, and I think, Ramsey, you did have a time limit on it.
Yeah, they're from 8 a.m. till 2 p.m.
Oh, it is 8 to 2, yeah.
Okay.
8 to 2 p.m., yes.
Great, thanks.
Again, a lot of consideration was meant for this for a special case. So thank you.
And it was also because the entrance to the school is actually from a place that would qualify to have the parking permit as opposed to the front of the church.
Thank you.
All right.
Any further discussion, comments?
Just, so this is, I know it's a nonprofit, it's a church, but we've had this discussion before where businesses have asked for residential permits and we said no. So it creates a bit of a conflict and it breaks a little bit of what we've done in the past, even though it's a church, I understand they don't have a big parking lot. Have we thought about potential? Again, I've been through this with my own church.
No, I
already.
Did
So,
talk about that.
but I imagine you probably did. So, and it's temporary. So is there a plan in place for?
Yeah, so right now, since we're working on chapter 104 and we're really focused on the vehicle and traffic portion of the parking ordinance, the next phase is going to be going through chapter 77, which is the residential parking permit program. And with that, we're going to be looking at different uses within residential areas, how the residential areas are being used, how many permits per house, how many off-street parking, everything like that. So the intention here is to do a temporary test case with this school just to help them till the end of the year while we can look at this in a more holistic, comprehensive way throughout the borough. And then as we review what we're doing for the residential permit plan overall, we can use that feedback to consider if this should be long-term. We might decide that we don't want to offer any non-residential in residential areas. And we also, Bernie brought up a couple of points about areas that have residential parking permits where no one parks. And so we've got a little savesies problem in some areas. So we're going to look at actual use versus, what we have going on as well.
It's necessary to do the full audit. It's time. But I just wanted to bring that to the public attention because we have said no, and I believe even we just recently took away some residential permits was that part of this package?
Sort of. So that is different because that would become a timed area and not a permitted area because it's in more of a commercial.
Okay. Thanks for answering the question.
Well, and similarly, we had a couple come to us applying for daycare. They wanted to do a daycare and they were rejected because they did not have enough parking. Even though they had secured parking from neighboring businesses and things like that, they didn't get it. So yeah, to your point, I think we have to be consistent. I mean, if you're going to redo the ordinance, yeah, then we have to maintain it consistently because I don't think it's fair that we're kind of misremembering, picking and choosing, what have you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have the same concern. Ramsey, I thought you said some of the businesses do have parking permits.
Yeah, there are some businesses within residential areas that do. We created when we redid the ordinance when I first started, and we have non-residential parking permits that are in residential areas. I don't love the system. I do. The one guide rail that we do have is that they can't park overnight. I think the permits end at 6 p.m. So they're staying overnight, but there's no maximum number of permits that you can get. So I know of a couple of businesses that have opened in residential areas, and I think we need to look at how those are being facilitated, especially with the permits.
When you say end of year, it's end of 2026 or end of the school year?
So once this Park Mobile rollout is rolling, I have Mikey looking at, we're going to start in the southeast area to look at the off-street parking spaces, the usage, and then I think we'll try to do it by quadrants, just so we don't overwhelm parking committee and ultimately you guys. So we'll start looking at that probably June or July, at least giving out the number so we can start having that conversation.
They do it through the summer, Nicole, because we asked that too. So it is 2026, end of the year.
So it would expire before September then? Is that what I'm hearing? Because you said it would go through summer, or would it?
No. I mean, it doesn't end when the school ends. It goes because the school keeps going. It doesn't take a summer break. So it's till end of the
permits
calendar
don't take
year.
the summer break.
Right. And neither does the school.
No, I understand that. So, but getting back, I forget whose question it was. I think it was Nicole's. Do these expire in December then, or in like the end of August?
December. That's my understanding. December.
Yeah, we have it until the end of the year.
The calendar.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
We talked.
Because we did ask that, whether we should have them expire, and the church said the school goes throughout, yeah.
Any further comments, questions? Good? Okay. The third is the motion to approve a resolution updating the handicap parking spaces. Again, this was a considerable amount of effort. Quite a large list of handicap parking spaces were included. I just want to reiterate, these are not private parking spaces. It's public. So if your handicap space is in front of your house, it's not your handicap space. It's the public space. So you do not own it. And again, yeah, it's just basically a motion to approve the list of handicap parking spaces. Comments? Thank you.
I did update, I've updated the resolution between parking committee and this resolution. So the ones that I had forgotten that Monica reminded me of, they are on this resolution.
A few additions. Any comments from the public? Okay, thank you.
All right. Who's in charge of finance and revenue tonight?
Playing the part,
All right.
Brian McGinnis tonight will be Jerry Sapaniak. All right, finance and revenue. The first issue here, excuse me, is to approve a budget modification to approve $14,600 for the Civil Service Commission and $345,200 for the clarifier at the Goose Creek wastewater plant. The first one is because the PD is doing some hiring. There are some basically requirements because of the Civil Service Commission that need to be met to go through that. And so therefore this is incremental spending, but it's, as I recall, it will have a net zero impact to the budget. And the second one is,
Wait, do we?
I'm sorry, do we treat them separately? Okay. Any questions on the first one?
There's going to be a book savings for one of our insurance expenses in the police department this year that'll offset the $14,600 additional money that the Civil Service Commission has spent.
Right. So so it will have a net zero impact to the budget because of that. Any other questions? Any questions? Comments? No. Okay. The clarifier broke at the Goose Creek wastewater plant. And there will be some offset to pay for this. The remainder will come from the Goose Creek project. It will be included as part of that. And there's about $120,000 savings from dewatering sludge budget to help offset that. Any questions or comments?
So that was all of number one.
Yes.
Okay, I understand.
So the savings for the clarifier will come from two capital projects in the wastewater fund, from the sludge dewatering project for $200,000. We have not spent any money on that as of year to date, right, as of today. So we're assuming that we're going to take about $120,000 from that project, and then the remainder of the savings on the Goose Creek substation. And that's how there'll be a net zero effect on this capital project as well.
Yeah. Consent.
Okay, next up, the motion to approve the resolution, excuse me again, to amend the fee schedule. I'm sorry. Try. This is to amend, this will be amended to include the Police Report Act 134 records to raise the cost per request to $175. Basically, this is due to the increased effort. These are only for criminal paperwork requests. No other fees will be changing. Questions, comments? What days? No? From those in attendance? No? All right. Next is to approve the grant resolution for the Chester County Department of Community Development, the Phase 2 Goose Creek conveyance. This is known as the Maple Alley. This is a project, obviously, as everybody's well aware, It's well over $1 million in total. Questions about that one? Okay, move that one to consent. Next up is the motion to approve purchasing requests, and there are three here. The first one is for the America 250 mural project. This is for $21,000. This was originally $15,000, but as I think most people are aware, the site had to be moved. It's a larger canvas, if you will, and consequently the cost will be going up. There's still a little bit of funding gap, but that is in process, and increase it from $15,000 to $21,000.
So quick question about that. So they're fundraising, so it probably not going to cost the borough $21,000.
That's the hope.
Got it. So the overall cost is $21,000 and we pick up whatever they don't fundraise.
We're fundraising, but we have grants already that the borough has already received. They've already had one fundraising, and then money out of the mayor's budget and the committee budget has already been allocated. So the shortfall at this point is, I think, about 3,800, something like that.
Yeah.
So we feel that that's very attainable.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to make clear. We're not saying it's going to cost taxpayers $21,000.
No.
No, it's not at all. No.
Our goal is it won't cost us anything.
Loves a good mural.
And it
And
is
it's a great location now. I love the location.
a great mural, a great location.
Really is.
Sorry, Barb, were you gonna say all
I
that?
was just going to confirm that we received a grant for $10,250, and we've received two small donations that total around $400. So while there is a slight, I mean, we should be able to fill that if the donations don't come through.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so we move that to consent. All right, next up is Abila for $12,107.83. This is for cloud systems.
Our accounting platform, and this is the last time we're going to be paying Abila for our accounting platform because we're under a comprehensive overhaul thanks to what we budgeted last year. So I'm really looking forward to that. Thanks for supporting that.
You're not looking forward to it as much as Barb here's looking forward to it.
Comments? Let's move that to consent. Last one here is for the bus ticket system for $183,162 for convenience fees. Questions?
So basically, I know there's a lot of chatter on Facebook about the fees for parking and Flowbird and all of those things. And it's basically they come in and then we have to pay them right back out, is my understanding. And that's kind of what this is.
Yes.
We don't get to keep that money, people. Sorry. Please no, we're not trying to do that.
So those are all of the POs. So I think we can move all of those up to consent.
Right.
And that's it for finance and revenue.
Now put on your Jerry hat.
Now, playing the role of Jerry Sapaniak tonight will be Jerry Sapaniak. Okay, smart growth. First one is this. Well, we already talked about that one, so I'll just skip that one. The next one is a motion to approve the draft for the data center ordinance and to schedule a public hearing. This will be a new regulation for data centers in the industrial district.
And
I
just
want to say that this is a zoning amendment, so it does need to go to the County Planning Commission. So you will not be able to do this at your June meeting. We'll have to push this to your July timeframe because we need to give ourselves at least 30 days to get to the County Planning Commission.
And just to clear up some confusion that I've heard in the community, there was a good article about this ordinance in Hello Westchester, but there was also a photograph that had underneath it something like, could the Chester County Cut or the Westchester Country Club be the next home. And so people were calling saying, why is the borough trying to put a data center at the country club? This is not that. This ordinance simply closes the gap between our ordinances that exist now and the much more stringent or clear standards for any data center that would want to come into the borough. In other words, we don't want to be caught flat-footed like some other municipalities have when a developer comes in and says, I want to do this. We can't develop a new ordinance at that point and expect them to meet it. So what we're doing is being proactive and creating this new data center ordinance that sets regulations as far as, lot size, setbacks, noise, vibration, stormwater, all of that stuff. Is it perfect? No. There may be more we should do, but this gets it on the books before any developer comes in and says, I want to do this. So.
And it only allows them in the industrial zoning district, which is not how the country club is zoned. So we looked carefully at what is the appropriate zoning district within the borough, or if somebody were to put this use in, and that's where we proposed it. It would be required to be approved through a conditional use process, and there are several criteria that an applicant would have to meet. And to Lisa's point, this is a work in progress. As you know, it's a very new use. All the municipalities in Chester County, with the assistance from the County Planning Commission, are trying to come to standards that will help allow the use. You can't prohibit the use within your municipality. That is under the state law. You must allow for all uses. But what we think is striking the balance of allowing it in a limited zoning district with appropriate regulations to make sure that the use does not impact the surrounding properties. And as we learn more about this use, as we hear more about uses like this that are being approved, we can always go back and amend the regulations at a future date. But we do think we'd like to get this on the books so that we have an appropriate regulation specific to a data center.
Thank you, Kristen. Well put. So basically, yeah, it's not perfect, but we have some guideline. We will have some guidelines in place, and then if we need to improve it, we will.
Very good foundation.
I see a hand raised.
I'd like to suggest the motion read to approve draft center zoning ordinance amendment and schedule a public hearing for July 15th, 2026.
Perfect.
I'm good with
Okay.
that.
Do I have to, somebody has to second it or what?
Yeah, no, I think we're just put on consent.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Got it.
Changing the agenda so it reads that way.
Okay.
For the consent.
Work session, it'll
For the
read
consent,
that.
yep.
If it didn't read that way, or at voting session, then someone would probably have to say it officially, but
Okay.
yeah, we're good here.
Okay, but obviously we're moving that up. We want to get that done sooner rather than later. All right, next up is to approve coincidentally the 250 mural project. This is the same project we just talked about, recommended by the Public Arts Commission. And we already talked about the funding, but this is just for the approval of the process and the mural itself. Questions about that? Okay, consent, move that to consent. And then we have two HARB applications. The first one is for 225 High Street. This is the Canon exhibition space at the History Center. And the Canon will be elevated to the height of how they would have been mounted should they have actually been in use, which they will not be, I want to stress. These are purely for display purposes. It also makes them more visible and kind of, it just looks, it will have a better look to it. That's number one. Any questions about that one? Take that as a no. Second one is for 123 East Gay Street. They want to put on a small rear addition. And this one is going, I mean, it was recommended for approval by the HARB. It will be virtually invisible except from the back. So it's not going to be visible from the front. You really have to seek it out to find it. Hence the approval and recommendation to move forward. Any questions about this one? Okay, let's move that to consent as well.
All right. Jerry, you can take your hat off, and Lisa, it's your turn.
Okay. Okay, Administration Communication Technology Committee, motion to approve an organizational chart for the borough website. And this is kind of a draft of what it would look like. I just have a couple of questions. It's at 3:0 to put it up. Again, kind of a starting place. Could we put the email for the borough council, the big group email there as well? So I don't have any problem with anything else there. And on the second page, or the third page, since it's kind of broken up, the only question I had about this one was how about putting the mayor's email there as well, since we have her listed, is whether the council should be shown on here at all. Like it is kind of on the org chart we have now. It's not, because this kind of looks like council has absolutely nothing to do with the police. And obviously, as we'll see later, we approve the hiring and I guess the firing and promotions and things like that. So like a line to the side or something with borough council. You see what I'm talking about, Mayor? What it had before was like council to the right with a straight across to the mayor, just to show that we are involved in the police organization.
Yes.
Page of it, Borough Council Police Organizational Chart. Put the mayor's email on there. Right, yeah. Yeah, it somehow just kind of got left off here, so.
Any
So with those corrections, any comment, questions from the crowd? There, scroll back up if you would, Bill. Okay, so that's Borough Council. Yeah, that is. So you're up there. Oh, you're not on the borough, that one. Good point. So maybe there should be a dotted line there as well. Yeah. And that previous one still exists, but it's like buried in an ordinance or the administrative code. And this will be more a quick link for people on the website. But I agree, a dotted line with the mayor as well. And on the other one, the flip side, dotted line to the council. Those were the only two things I saw that. Anybody else? Any questions, comments, concerns? All right, so if you make those changes, we'll do it as a consent. And number 2, motion to approve HRMMNL. You'll have to do your thing, Sean. For legal representation related to the Borough of Westchester, Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education. This is hiring this attorney to continue to work on the stormwater or the stream fee that we just had the Supreme Court decision on that. So rather than have our current lawyers who are, assigned to the borough right now, continue to use the guy who did all the initial work and knows this case inside and out and argued it and everything else. So we would just be having him continue that work at basically the same fee structure as our own. Sean, can you explain that better than I just did?
Most of it, you got it. The hourly rate's $2.45 an hour. Michael Gill used to be with Buckley Bryan, our borough solicitor's firm. But after he argued before the Supreme Court, which was September of 2024, a couple months later, he left the practice and joined HRMML. And we haven't billed any time or expenses to him on the matter until now, when the decision has been rendered by the court, and we need advice on what to do next.
I will also add that one of Michael's partners is the solicitor for the Municipal Authorities Act for the entire Commonwealth and has been working extensively with that organization on the ramifications of the Supreme Court's decision. And so there is some commonality and really good reasons why to continue to use his firm, because they have the combined experience of both Michael Gill, who spent, he was our lead counsel on this case when he was with our firm, but now also having the resources, rather than duplicating efforts, a lot of the research that they're doing is going to benefit not only the borough, but municipal authorities throughout the Commonwealth.
Are we joining with any other borough or municipality in this fight? Are we the only lone wolf out there doing this?
To be clear, there's no.
There's no fight right now. This is determining how to comply with the court's decision, and we will have a much more extensive conversation about that. But to the extent that there are efforts going forward in terms of lobbying and whatnot, yes, I'm sure we could pull resources together with various organizations. But this is specific to what the Borough of Westchester must do in response to the Supreme Court's decision. And there's a lot of complex issues that have to be discussed with the council.
This isn't a decision to move forward.
I guess my question is still, we need to kind of be having these conversations, not in a silo, but certainly there are things only that are geared toward Westchester, but there are commonalities in all these boroughs and municipalities that we need to have discussion on how to respond. So I'm just wondering, are we doing that in context with other municipalities and boroughs, or are we in a silo doing this?
You're on to something really important here. The court has rendered a decision, and it's the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So there's really nowhere to go here after this. I'm not going to wade too much into the legal piece of it, but there's a legislative remedy. Harrisburg can do something about this.
Sure.
And in fact, Representative Pielli has co-sponsored a bill that can do something about this. So I think there's a legislative remedy we can take up and speak to and form a coalition around. Totally agree with you.
And this isn't we're not deciding to appeal it or take any action at this point. This is just to have.
There's nowhere to appeal it to. This is a final decision rendered. There's no appellate review.
That I understood. Again, my point is whatever discussions we're having should not be in a silo. They should be with others so that we can, there's force in numbers.
Mayor, the only point I'll make, and I don't disagree with you at a future point, what this specific retention of this firm to do is to determine the significance of the decision on what the borough has to do with fees that have been collected and what it has to do with its specific ordinance. And that is unique to the Borough of Westchester. So there are specific questions that they're helping us sort through that are only germane to the Borough of Westchester. To the extent that in the future we identify, and I'm sure we will, identify things that have a broader impact on other municipalities, I think absolutely we will look for, and as we had amicus curiae briefs filed at the Supreme Court level, there will be many, many organizations that will want to pull resources to try to get to some other funding sources for these stormwater management obligations. But this limited scope right now is specific to dealing with the ramifications of the Supreme Court decision with respect to the actual program that the borough itself had.
That is a better in-depth answer. I appreciate that, and that's understandable. So thanks for a clearer, more concise answer. I would
You're
say, I just wanted to make sure we weren't throwing, as the quote says, good money after bad, because we need to figure out how to recoup some of this in other ways, roundabout ways. But thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
So are we good to move this to consent? Any public comment at all? So we will move this to consent tomorrow.
All right, let's move on to other business. Motion to approve settlement mutual release 436 North Church Street.
Aaron, do you want to cover this or am I covering this? Okay, so this is just, there was a enforcement matter that Aaron's department handled. This property owner went ahead and did some changes to their multifamily structure without obtaining building permits. And Aaron's office, when they were alerted to that, they issued a citation, notice of violation, and then a citation in the district court. The property owner admitted liability and responsibility and is taking steps to correct it. They are represented by Mr. Nagel, and they asked if rather than going through the district court process and having to attend the hearing, could they enter a settlement agreement and pay a stipulated fine to the borough? I said, that's fine. That saves the borough money in terms of not having to send its code enforcement officers to the court. The court would have likely issued a fine in the realm of $100 to $500, and that's what they're agreeing to pay. But because we're agreeing, the code department will withdraw the citation. They have already paid the stipulated fine of $500, and they're taking steps to make sure that any of the work that they did, they have to remove, and Aaron's office has to, whatever permits need to be obtained for what they did will be obtained.
Any questions? Any questions from anyone out? All right, I think we're okay to put that on consent. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Motion to approve candidates submitted by the mayor to Borough Council for hire as police officers. Tyler Brooks, Christopher Clue, and Matthew Marcelino. And we need to approve these so that they can be hired.
Thank you, Josh Lee, Police Chief. I'll try to keep it really brief. Those three candidates came to the top of the list and were certified as eligible by Civil Service. Her Honor Mayor DeBaptiste has chosen those three top candidates out of off of the list, and I'm very excited that we're on track with what is usually a 4, 5, 6 month process that you're familiar with to get these future officers in the door. Tyler Brooks will be graduating the Police Academy in late June, and he's a Navy veteran, a Chester County native. Christopher Clue is a certified police officer from another state. He's recently moved to the area. He has 7 years experience as a police officer. And Matthew Marcelino will be entering the police academy in late June. He's a Montgomery County, a Montgomery County resident and a volunteer firefighter. All three are very highly qualified. I'm very excited that we're at this point, and I ask council to approve their hire. And certainly I'll defer to the mayor if she has anything she'd like to add.
How long is the time into police academy?
It's about 6 months, just shy of 6 months. And what's very important is the timing of when we hire, because the police academy, like I said, starts in late June. Actually early July, but the process to get in, we have to be engaged in June. And if we miss that window, then we have to wait until the next time rolls around, which is January.
Thank you.
All right, any questions? Any questions from those in attendance? All right, we'll move that on to consent. And then discuss directing the solicitor to attend the June 15th, 2026 zoning hearing for appeal number 1040, 244 East Evans Street.
Do you want me to do this one?
Yeah, I got this one.
Okay.
The solicitor will be attending because they have appealed my notice of violation for installing a gym in an NC2 district. They are also
I'm
asking,
sorry, say that again?
they are using a gym in the NC2 district, which is not allowed under our zoning code. So they're appealing my decision in my NOV. So the attorney will be attending for that. However, they have asked also for a variance where they can take a non-conforming use and change it to another non-conforming use as long as it has less intensity and certain criteria such as noise pollution, light pollution, parking, traffic, air pollution, things of that sort. This previously was an automobile use and currently now has been a gym. We did have several people show up at the continuance to speak against the gym use. So we're asking if you guys are okay with the solicitor to also fight the variance for allowing the nonconformity change.
It's actually the other way around. So your ordinance allows a non-conforming use to be converted to a different non-conforming use, provided they demonstrate that the one that they're trying to convert to is less intense. And the ordinance speaks to the factors that you look at for whether or not it's less intense. They look at lot coverage, parking, traffic, noise pollution, air pollution, safety, and area and bulk regulations. So the code allows the zoning officer to make that interpretation as to whether the conversion, in this case, from an automobile repair shop to a physical fitness facility, was a less intense of a non-conforming use. And what happened here is the property owner did not seek any sort of interpretation from Aaron. They did not obtain a zoning permit, which the code requires. They just went ahead and converted it and on their own made the determination that the non-conforming use was less intense. When Aaron found out about it, I guess he had conversations with the owner and determined that there wasn't enough for him to conclude that the physical fitness facility or the gym was less intense than the automobile repair shop, and therefore sent the notice of violation. They have appealed that notice of violation. In the municipality's planning code, if a property owner appeals the notice of violation, it is the municipality's burden to defend that notice and to prosecute basically the case. So you don't really have a choice. If you'd like to uphold the notice of violation, you must send your solicitor to uphold the violation. What the applicant did in their appeal, they also in the alternative said, okay, well, if I can't win on the fact that it's a less intense of non-conforming use, which is a very, very fact-specific determination, they've asked for a use variance. A use variance is a very difficult burden to prove. You have to basically prove there's no other use that you can make of the property that conforms with your ordinance. And in this case, they have the right to go back to the automobile repair shop because that is a lawful non-conforming use. So what I wanted to make sure I understood, in addition to defending the notice of violation, and obviously letting the zoning hearing board make a factual determination of if this particular physical fitness facility or gym is less intense, I wanted to know if council wanted us also to oppose the request for a use variance. When you send the solicitor to zoning hearing boards, we need to understand what council's position is and what our goal is. So that's why I wanted this to be on the agenda.
And my understanding is, Aaron, the reason that you sent the violation notice, or the reason you were alerted to the business in the beginning, was that neighbors were concerned about the noise and
Yes, there were several neighbors who had complained about noise, traffic, and them doing renovations without permits.
So to get to Kristen's, what the attorneys need, do you give that? How do
we
do
give
it?
that, yes.
now
So,
or tomorrow or?
well, yeah, between now and Wednesday, yes. So,
And
um,
this case, I want to say another thing. We don't know a lot about this use. So one of the things you could do is you could have us attend the hearing and then report back to you on the details of the use. Because we could always ask for, we could go and represent the borough and say, well, we need a continuance. We need the facts. So we could come back to you at your June smart growth, well, I guess it'll be after your smart growth, but we could come back with, hey, here's what they testified to. Here's how they're planning to operate the gym. Does council have an opposition if they were to approve the request to, that it is a less less intensive non-conforming use? Or are you guys okay with this use going in, even if it required a use variance? I think it's hard in the abstract without hearing how this particular gym would be operated, because in the back of my mind, I always, want council to understand it can go back to being an automobile repair shop. And even though the prior owner maybe didn't have a very intensive automobile repair shop, there could be some intensive automobile repair shop as compared to a gym. It really depends on who's operating it, what their hours of operation are, how many employees, that kind of thing. So it's a very fact-specific question for you, and I don't think you have all the facts. So I would be comfortable if you wanted to send us for the first purpose and defer the second issue until we learn more. We would just have to ask, after we hear their applicant's testimony, we would have to ask for a continuance so we could come back and provide that information to council.
I just want to bring up, Kristen, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but they did just continue it from this month to next month. So there was
June
already one
15th.
continuance. Yes.
Right, but they would start their hearing. They would start their hearing. Any party has the right. The applicant would present their testimony, and then we as Borough Council, we would go first because it's our burden on the notice of violation. But then it would go over to the applicant. They could present their case. I could then ask for a continuance to be able to provide this information back to council, and they could continue the hearing. That's not an unusual request, and I think the applicant would welcome the opportunity if it meant that council wasn't going to oppose their use variance. So that's just one option. If you want to send from the get-go to oppose both, that's fine too. It's a little bit different because they have an alternative to go back to an automobile repair shop, and council may want to understand exactly how this gym is being operated.
But at this point, we really don't know anything at all about the gym use. I mean, in terms of what kind of impact that's having on the neighborhood.
Other
Correct.
than the complaints that Aaron has received, which don't really know what those are.
yeah, it sounds like the complaints could have been construction related that'll
The complaints
finish.
have been excessive noise from 5:30 to 8 o'clock in the evening. There have been issues with parking, cars being parked on the grass area, not on the parking spots. Restriction of the road because of the number of cars parked there, people not being able to find or being able to get into their parking spaces because of other vehicles there.
And I think Kristen said kind of what I was getting at, what Jerry just said. We don't know enough as to, but so yes, we would need the attorney to go and say, we need a continuance and you need to tell us more about it. So we can either approve or not.
Or oppose.
Push back further. Okay, I'm okay with that.
That makes sense to me.
All right. Any other questions from you guys up here? Any questions from you guys out there? All right, then we will, so the direction is to send the solicitor to the June 15th, 2026 zoning hearing to oppose the non-conforming or to represent us on the non-conforming fee piece and to listen in on if it comes to this variance piece and then come back to us. However you guys want to
Yeah,
write that.
I would say it this way: defend the borough in the appeal of the enforcement notice, and seek additional information and facts to relate back to council for the use variance request. And I can work with Dana tomorrow for how that should be worded.
Thank you. Thank you. I won't write that down because I'll botch it again. Okay. All right. So we'll put that on consent. All right. Any other business? All right. Only one thing tomorrow. We are here tonight because we're not here tomorrow, and we're not here tomorrow because you should go vote. Go vote. So, and then we'll see you back on Wednesday.